Hey everybody, and welcome to Stock Abilities. Today I'm going to be covering the Trump Senate trial, and as you can see here through the impeachment process, that the House determined that through the votes that he should be impeached and brought to the Senate trial for 2020. So I'm going to be covering that in this video. So make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment below your own input, and listen in through the whole video so that you can get all the input in regards to what I feel about it and what's going on, and details about Trump for into 2020 for the Senate trial, and his own input and Twitter and things like that. So, gonna jump right into it here. That for the Democratic, it was a yay, basically 210, nay, 3, press 1, be 19, and you got 0 on the yeah and 144 on the nay for the Republican, of course. And then you got 53 for the NV, and then 1 for independent. And you get the totals of 211, 147, 172. And this is for into December 18th, and that means it's going to be going to the Senate trial. This is from PBS NewsHour here, as you can see in the bottom left. And as I was saying, basically, President Trump is impeached in a historic vote by the House and will face trial in the Senate. House of Representatives votes to impeach President John Trump for high crimes and misdemeanors. How this is going to affect his real election odds and results for in 2020 is yet to be seen. Obviously, it depends how it pans out in January here. Fred marks only the third time in American history that the House has impeached a president. Covered this in the previous video if you want to check that out, that focuses more on the impeachment process and what it is and what it means. And he was in the middle of doing a campaign rally in Michigan while this was happening, so I guess he's not too worried about what's going on. If you're not familiar, officers subject to impeachment are civil officers of the United States. I want to cover that. The Constitution gives Congress the authority to impeach and remove the president, vice president, and all civil officers of the United States upon a determination that such officers have engaged in treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. In Trump's case, they're focusing on the high crimes and misdemeanors, but it's unclear what exactly he did and what the Democrats feel that he did and how that's going to proceed. That's all in the Senate trial now, and we're going to see how that progresses into the near future. So make sure to subscribe to that channel if you want another video on this topic. And the only penalty, if you're not familiar, through the Senate trial is a removal from office upon conviction by 2/3 of the senators present. Upon conviction, no president or vice president has ever been convicted. Keep that in mind. So this is more like a political drama than anything else. Now, this is Wikipedia, so you can trust that as much as you want, but I mean, you can look up historical facts and determine this to be true. Second vote is held to determine by majority vote of the senators present if the convicted holder shall be barred from holding further federal office. So if Trump ends up being, he already was impeached, but if he ends up being basically removed from the office, he may not be able to run for president into the next year. So it could be a big dramatic thing that if that happens and it gets to that point, but historically it's never gotten to that point for a president or a vice president. And impeachment may occur at the federal level or the state level. The federal office can impeach federal officials, including the president and each state's legislator, and impeach state officials, including governor, in accordance with their respective federal or state constitution. Of course, this is coming at an all-time high for Trump and the presidency and the stock market and the economy in general, that it's looking pretty healthy. So it's not looking so great into January to kind of push this. They're trying to essentially, in my opinion, push them down, push the White House down, push Trump down, and things like that, and try to get a Democrat back into the political seat, so to speak, for presidency. And it's looking more like this is only going to help Trump, and it's, in my opinion, looking kind of on the desperation end for Democrats. But of course, this is my political opinion. Obviously, you have your own. If you disagree with me, feel free to leave in the comments below your own input in that regard. So what's next for Trump? Senate impeachment trial. Here's what we know about the President Trump's trial that's likely to unfold through the Senate into 2020. Now that the House has voted to impeach President Trump, the matter moves to the Senate for a trial. The third foreign American president. It's said a lot of that in a lot of media outlets. Two-thirds majority, 67 senators, is required to convict and remove the president. That's quite a while. Republicans control the Senate with 53 to 47. So it's going to be kind of a close vote, assuming that the Democrats are very aggressive in the Senate aspect. Mr. Trump is widely expected to be acquitted, obviously. But if he ending up ends up not being acquitted, he can get removed and potentially not be able to run for president into the next year. Obviously, the intent is to try to get him removed so that he can't run for president in the next year, but we'll see what happens. And the Democrats have argued that impeaching him is a moral necessity even if he remains in office. And Mr. Trump is only the third president to face the Senate trial for high crimes and misdemeanors. First two, Andrew Johnson and Bill Clinton, were both acquitted. Other President Richard M. Nixon resigned rather than face impeachment and trial. Doesn't look like Trump is going to essentially back down, so it's likely going to go through the impeachment process. And then, if it comes down to it, he would get acquitted or removed. Acquitted basically means that nothing really happens. And the latest details about the Trump impeachment and Senate trial for 2020 is that the trial is expected to begin in January, early January. It's unclear how long it will last. Republicans and Democrats alike have expressed an interest in keeping it short. It's a very vague input, but I guess we'll see what happens in that regard. In a previous example that's stated in this article is that in the 1999 trial of Mr. Clinton, who was tried on 2 articles of impeachment, perjury, and obstruction of justice, lasted about 5 weeks. This is maybe a more comprehensive trial as compared to Bill Clinton and his drama and all that kind of stuff. But I would say you're looking at maybe the better end of up to 2 months. I don't think it would exceed much beyond February or March, uh, conveniently into the new year. So you might see a little bit more volatility than you usually see. And who does it? As they say, to start, Speaker Nancy Pelosi of California, of course, she's involved, would appoint a team of lawmakers to act as prosecutors during the trial. They are called managers and they present the articles of impeachment to the Senate. So basically, everything that Trump is being accused for in the impeachment basically means that by being impeached, he's accused of these crimes, and they felt it was severe enough to bring it to the Senate trial to kind of further potentially prosecute and or acquit him in that regard. And if he's basically found guilty, he just gets removed from presidency altogether, and then essentially potentially running for in the future for presidency. And Chief Justice of the United States, John G. Roberts Jr., would preside over the trial, and the legal team would defend Mr. Trump, of course. Patty A. Cipollone, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, the White House counsel, is expected to represent Mr. Trump, but obviously there's no input on that. And of course, he has the president's outside lawyers, which are very pricey, very expensive. So he has tons of monies to fight this. How aggressive he's going to fight it, there's a lot to say, both back and forth from both parties. So in January, you're probably going to expect a little bit more volatility than you usually would expect outside of just straight up when everybody's rebuying back into the stocks and everything for into the new year. You might see a little bit down, a little bit up, back and forth with the political jousting, so to speak. And the Senate essentially would have to come to an agreement on the trial procedures. Senators Mitch McConnell of Kentucky and Chuck Schumer of New York, the Republican and Democratic leaders, have already sparred over that task. Of course, they say more on that later. And how will that work? Any senator could propose a motion to dismiss the charges. A simple majority vote would be needed. So someone says, well, hey, this doesn't seem right, and then a big majority of them vote against it, then it's out the window. So they have to convince not only the Republicans, but the Democrats. So while the Democrats are obviously going to be easier to convince, but the Republicans are a bit of a tougher cookie, as you've seen sort of with the votes there, as I showed at the beginning of the video, that you're not likely to see him actually getting removed from the office, but you never know with these kind of proceedings and things like that through the Senate in 2020 how that would work out. And there would be an opening closing statement. So it's basically like a court case if you're familiar with all the structure of that, and questions from the senators, the managers, and the defense lawyers, possibly even more subpoenas, evidence requests, and witnesses called. Deliberations would likely happen in a closed session before a vote. The Democrats are probably pretty happy about it, that they got it to the impeachment point, but how it's going to progress from basically the House to the Senate is a whole other ball game. That's you're dealing with a grand jury of a multitude of people, and it's not as easy of a potential victory in that scenario. And for Clinton's, it was William H. Request presided